Time keeps on leaving and we keep on moving. When do we pass on our wisdom to the youth? My veteran story, lost arts discussions, fireside chats with a bourbon or two. It's time to hear the stories by military veterans. Get yourself ready. It's the Lost Arts Podcast. The Lost Arts with Andrew Cox.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Lost Art Podcast. That podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we will be having a My Veteran Story with Lee Glasser, Marine veteran and motivator. But before we get into the episode, are you enjoying the podcast? And be sure to go check us out at the Lost Art website. That's the lostart.podbean.com. Go check out the site, scroll down, look at all the cool stuff that we have in there. But make sure you hit that merchandise tab. Go check out some of our cool merchandise. Maybe get you a hat, get you a shirt, get you something cool. Help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. You can also check us out on YouTube at The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. So be sure to smash the like button, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast and tell your story, or if you would like to come on and talk about a veteran owned business or organization, then email me at the lost art with Andrew Cox at gmail.com. I try to keep it all simple. That's not for you, that's for me. But to all the listeners, thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show here. All right, I got Lee Glasser here. Lee, how you doing?
I'm doing well, brother. Yourself?
Oh man, I can't complain. Other than I'm running a little behind this morning, but other than that, I'm good.
You and I both. When you told me you were still setting up, I was like, oh, thank God. I need like 10 more minutes.
Yeah, it worked out for both of us, man.
Yeah,
Um, so uh so your veteran story, we're gonna go back to the beginning, not the beginning, but where did you grow up? And then kind of walk us through what led you into military service.
absolutely. So for the most part, I grew up in Texas, in the DFW area. I graduated from a small town. I graduated with 98 people in my high school class. A lot of people may have heard of it now. It's a town called Prosper. It's actually apparently people know where it is now when I talk about it. It's like I there was nobody there before when I lived there, and now apparently it's on the map. So that's just how it goes.
Wow.
Um, Life was interesting, I mean, Deion Sanders lived like 2 blocks down the way. There were a
Get
couple other
out of
people.
town. Are
Yeah,
you
no, so
serious?
I'm dead serious. Deion Sanders had this big old mega mansion on his own little private property, and I lived in like the next neighborhood, like down the street. And so I'd pass his
Wow.
house every single day. It was nuts to look at. And dude, I'm not going to talk on recording about my personal feelings. He's an interesting person to say
Yeah,
the
well,
least.
yeah. I can understand that. Yeah. Wow. But that's
So
pretty cool. I mean, right next to him, that's
yeah.
pretty awesome, man.
So, I mean, small town life was interesting, playing sports, playing music,
Hmm.
doing a whole bunch of different stuff. Um, so I was a musician for a long time. My dad was a musician for a long time. And so I ended up wanting to, so when I was graduating high school, I kind of had like, I didn't know where I was going because it's like you've got a million and one things ahead of you. Um, but I was pretty set on joining the Marine Corps straight out of high school. I was kind of looking. I had met somebody that I knew from my high school. He had graduated the year before. He came back. Turns out he became a Marine. We were chatting about it, and it's just like, hey, like I can't afford college right now. It's like my parents can't afford college. It's like college gets paid for. It's like, why don't we talk? Why don't we talk, brother? And so we were just kind of talking about stuff, and my parents turned out my parents weren't super happy about it. So my mom actually comes from a military heavy family. So my mom is the youngest
Okay.
of nine. So my mom's the youngest of nine, and all of her siblings have either joined the military or married somebody in the military. So I
Wow.
have a lot, yeah, and of course a lot of my cousins have also joined the military. Um, Only one other Marine in the family, though. My cousin Dennis is also a Marine, and he's the only other one that I'm aware of. Everybody else is like Army, Navy. I think there might be one Coastie in there. But yeah,
Yeah. So
so
you
but
guys are kind of the outcast of it, you know.
that's 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 right. That's right. Us Marines, us crayon eaters, brother.
That's
Um,
right.
so I was talking to my parents about it, and my dad was not super happy about it. Because he worked with some Marines, and of course they kind of like put some things in his head. It's like, oh, it doesn't matter what he does, he's gonna deploy. And my dad just wasn't comfortable with all that, of course. And
Yeah.
my parents ended up sending I ended up going to college for a couple years straight out of high school. And so I was looking at still trying to play pro baseball at the time. I was looking
Oh
at
wow.
yeah, so I don't talk about it a
You're
lot.
yeah, you're skimming over some stuff. I didn't know that about you, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. So okay, so I'll track back just a little bit. So I played with Team USA's junior Olympic baseball team when I was 17 in Puerto Rico. Um, my my coach that I played for was a scout for the New York Mets. I was being scouted by multiple D1 universities. Of course, I was like on the Mets roster and a whole bunch of different stuff. And I ended up blowing my shoulder out going into my senior year of high school. Kind of dealt with it for as long as I could. Didn't do rehab properly. We couldn't really didn't really go the surgery route, and that was just kind of it. And so I took the summer off going into college, and that was kind of it. I was trying to find a place that I could play ball and do music at the same time, because
Mhm.
if anybody does multiple extracurriculars, they know how difficult it is to deviate time. Everybody wants that time. It's like, no,
Right.
we're the priority. You gotta come do this over here with everybody else. And
Hmm.
so when you're doing multiple extracurriculars, there's a juggling act, and music and sports always vie for that position. Um, so doing that in a full-time capacity, like in college, was going to be really difficult. And my coach was working on trying to find me a program that I could do that at. And a kid I played ball with on my high school team, his parents were actually both graduates from a small school called Hardin Simmons University. And they were like, I
Okay.
think you should really consider looking at a small school if you really want the priority to be able to do both. And I did. I ended up going to Hardin Simmons. They actually have a world-renowned music program. They're a little bit
Mm.
lesser known because of being a smaller school. Um, and I just never recovered from my baseball injury, and so that I just kind of I went out to go play. Like I said, I took the summer off, and so I was pretty rusty, and I didn't make the cut, and I just kind of called it right then and there. Um, I look back on a lot of different things, and it's just like funny story. It's like my late father would tell me his own story about how um his music baseball career. My dad, when he was in high school, received a full scholarship. My parents are from New York, upstate New York area. And my dad receives a full scholarship to go pitch at Pepperdine University. He
No
had
kidding.
never
Wow.
So he had never heard of the school, threw the scholarship away, and went to go be a gigging musician traveling for the next 10 years. And so
What?
he tells me how he's driving up the PCH one time with the band, and there's Pepperdine University on the cliffs of Malibu, and he's just like, what the fuck was I thinking? But
Wow.
but the funny story, but the irony in that is my dad actually had the same story as me. Like
Mhm.
he dealt with an arm injury as a pitcher like late in his high school career, and he just kind of was burnt out on it, just wasn't interested in like fixing that. And wanted to pursue music instead. And he looks back
Yeah.
on it and he's just like, "Oh shit, what was I thinking?" And so it's kind of funny how almost the same exact thing just kind of happened with me, but everything happens for a reason.
Oh yeah.
I mean, had I gone and played pro baseball, I wouldn't be a Marine Corps veteran today. I wouldn't be doing a lot of the different things
Hmm.
that I'm doing to that. And I won't jump too far ahead and skip everything else, but that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I was a music major in college. I did that for a couple of years. I decided that college just wasn't really for me. I just
Hmm.
like college wasn't going badly. I just fucking hated it, man.
Yeah.
There's just really no other way to put it. Like,
It's not for everybody.
it's just really not. Like, I would like, you do the classes, you go party, you hang out. It just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so like, I talked to my parents, and it's just like, hey, I've done this for a while. This is not what I want to be doing. Like, I'd really like to revisit, like, going to go talk to the Marine Corps recruiters. And at that point, my dad was a lot more open to it. We had a conversation. They heard me out from where I was coming from. It's just like college is too fucking expensive to me just be going for me to not want to be here, on top of the fact that like they'll pay for it. And so
Mhm.
um I'm skipping another little tidbit. I'm sorry for forgetting this. If
That's all right. Go ahead.
So my senior year in high school,
Hmm.
me and some friends went to the state fair, and we're just kind of walking around, and we heard some music playing. So being in the band and everything, being the band nerd that I was, like DCI was huge for at least
Hmm.
for my generation. Like we loved watching the DCI competitions. We loved talking about it. We were just all about that shit. And so we heard what sounded like a drum and bugle corps playing. We went, and like we're all band people, so we went and go check it out. And it turns out it's the Commandant Zone. And so we
Yeah.
sit there,
Okay.
and we're watching the Commandant Zone, and I'm just like, those guys are shit hot. Like coming from watching like a bunch of DCI competitions, like that's fucking cool. Like that's awesome. And so like that's kind of really what made me read that, like that moment right there was what really made me think like this is what I want to do. And so
Yeah.
like that's kind of why like I felt like college was a waste of my time, and I'd always really wanted to go do the Marine Corps because it's like I can go be doing this. Why am I not doing this instead? So I went and I talked with the recruiters. That conversation was pretty interesting because, of course, I'm sure everybody has their own interesting recruiter stories, but they're just like, oh, it's really hard to get into the band and this, that, and the other. And they set me up a call with the what is it? The MIOP? Is it just the MIOP
The
recruiter?
it's the MTA
MTA.
oh
Yeah,
man,
that's right.
musician
Oh,
technical assistant or something like that.
yeah. So the music recruiters,
Yeah.
he gets me in touch with them, and they're just like, oh, we don't really have a need for tuba players right now, but we can schedule something. And it's just like, okay, that's not great to hear, but I'm still interested because of course my recruiter, like he asked me, he's like the getting in the band's tough, man. He's like, if you don't get into the band, like, are you still interested in joining the Marine Corps? I was like, fuck yeah, I'm here, brother. Like whether I go fly on airplanes or I go shoot guns or I'm playing music, like I want to be here.
Yeah.
So he was all about that, and he was pretty supportive. Like I said, he got me connected. We end up doing the audition, and the audition went really well. He gave me a 2.8. Like in that audition, he was just like raving about how excited he was and this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, so that feels really good. And so of course that kind of
Yeah.
springboards that whole chain of events. You get ready for MEPS, you get ready for shipping out, you get ready for boot camp and all that jazz. And
Right.
so that leads me to going into the Marine Corps. That leads me into, of course, going through boot camp, combat training, the schoolhouse, all the way to getting stationed to Lejeune. Um, my funny story on that is the fact that like so my brother and his family lived in North Carolina. I
Hmm.
have a half brother on my dad's side of the family, and so I was really excited to go be near him and them. Um, so they're asking for your wish list, and like my wish list is Hawaii, Japan, and Cherry Point, so I can go be near him. And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you want Cherry Point? Let's send you to Lejeune. That's
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
perfect." And so I ended up getting pretty motivated about that because I was like, I joined the Marine Corps because I wanted the opportunity to deploy. Because like my dad's like, if you want to go be in the band, you can go be in the Army, you can go be in the Navy, you can go be in the Air Force. You could literally go be in any other branch. You don't have to go be in a branch that wants to deploy. And it's like, no, I want to deploy. Like,
Yeah.
like I want to go do some Marine Corps shit and get paid to go play music. Like this is a
Yeah.
win-win. Um, like, I mean, I don't look at it any other way as a win-win right there. Like that's all I want to do is just go shoot guns and go get paid to play music.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a great thing.
and so like I find out I'm getting stationed at Lejeune, and it's like, okay, I can get pretty motivated about this. I actually have the opportunity to deploy now.
Yeah.
Um, I get to Lejeune, and it's just like we don't deploy, man. we it's like it's been like 10 years since we've deployed. We're probably never getting deployed again. It's just like, oh, so this is just gonna suck. It's just gonna be change of command ceremonies and retirement ceremonies for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Um, we're going through it. It's still an enriching experience being at Lejeune because you're still in one of the most major units in the entire Ock field, in the entire Marine Corps. I mean, Lejeune's one of the biggest backbones of the Marine Corps. I mean, you're talking if I don't even know how many people are stationed at Lejeune anymore. Like last I was
I
there,
don't.
it was
It's
like 20, 30,000 people at a minimum when I
yeah.
was
It's a
there
lot of
like
people.
15 years
Yeah.
ago. Yeah. Yeah, so you're talking a significant chunk of the Marine Corps is right there at the heart of Lejeune. So it was still a great experience. Turns out, Second Meth is getting ready to gear up, and General Tulin comes to the band and says, "I want an active musical unit while we're deployed." And he says, "You guys make it happen. I don't." And he's like, "I don't care how many people are going, but we need to send some people." And so what ended up happening was 7 people got selected from our unit, so we could just have a functioning ensemble. And so it was me and 6 other people ended up going on this deployment to with the second MEF, and that ended up being such an incredible experience for me. I was so thankful to have that opportunity to to go to Afghanistan to work in a real Marine Corps environment because that's even further. Like you find out like it's like okay, I really want to deploy. It's like, dude, you really don't want to deploy. It's like if we deploy, we're just a security element. We're literally just stuck on guard in post for 12 hours a day for the entire deployment. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, that does sound like that sucks. But I ended up having the opportunity to work within the MEF. I ended up getting a secret clearance, and I ended up working with a unit called the Afghan National Security Forces Development Office. And
Oh wow.
long story shorter, that entailed, so Afghanistan is broken down into 4 quadrants, and all
Hmm.
of RC Southwest, all of the training for the Afghan National Security Forces development ran through our office.
Wow.
Um,
That's cool.
so so as a corporal, I was at the bottom of the barrel. Like it
Yeah.
was 3 staff sergeants, 2 gunnies, a master sergeant, um,
Wow.
3 captains, 2 majors, a lieutenant colonel who pinned full bird, and a full bird colonel on that deployment. And that was just the Marines. So this was a joint ISAF
Wow.
mission. This was a joint ISAF mission with a British colonel, 2 British lieutenant colonels, 2 British majors, 3 British majors, and a Danish major. We're all in this office. It
Wow.
was it was an incredible experience. And it was me, 2 corporals, and 2 sergeants.
Yeah.
Like that was
Yeah.
like field grade, like command element level operation where it was the decision house for everything that was going to be happening for the implementation of this training. So what we were doing was we were facilitating a dozen different teams that were embedded with Afghan forces. So you're talking with the Afghan
Hmm.
forces, you're talking the Border Patrol, the National Army, the local police, their special forces, and I think I'm missing one more as well. And so all of their training came through our office. And we had these embedded teams that were working hands on with them based on our direction and our guidance on how to conduct that training, what their benchmarks were, and of course, to identify shortcomings as well as requirements needed on our end. And it's like I'm sitting here working on reports going straight to General Tulin. Like literally, like there's two
Yeah.
people basically between me and the most senior person on this entire deployment chain of command, 3 people. Like you're talking like my staff listed, my officer, and maybe somebody between him and us. But it was
Right.
incredible. I got to work in an office and I got to make shit happen in an element that I never would have seen. Most people in the Marine Corps don't even
Yeah.
see. Um, Coming from my position not only as a corporal but also as a bandsman. And so I was really
Hmm.
thankful for this opportunity to go do real Marine Corps things. Um, I ended up being deployed for just under a year. I ended up earning 2 stars for the length of my deployment.
Oh wow.
It was yeah, it was a really because most of the time we're on 6 month pumps. We're in
Yeah.
and out. really quick turnaround. I was there for 11 months, and that was, I mean, you're talking it's a lot. 7 days a week,
Mhm. Yeah.
14-hour days. Um, it's that's a lot.
Yeah, it
But
is.
I'll never regret like these are pivotal experiences that shaped me into who I am. I like professionally where I am today, I have to give a lot of credit to what I was doing in those offices because it's like I'm
Mhm.
working, most of the time you're a corporal, you're talking with other corporals or you're talking with other sergeants, and you may be talking with other staff sergeants. Like I'm talking up and down all day, every day with a captain or a major or a
Right.
lieutenant colonel. And it's just like this is a normal conversation that I have to be having. And that really translated well for working in the civilian environment because it's like when
Hmm.
you have everything from like stakeholder engagement or you're trying to um get a grant or you're trying there's a lot of different people you can be talking to and like people can get nervous when you're dealing with nothing short of what most people would consider high stakes environments. You've got a
Yeah.
major project that's worth millions of dollars that you're working on. You're trying to build connections to grow your personal business. You're trying to gain connections if you want a recommendation at this company they work for. There's all sorts of different things that can
Yeah.
really that like us as the military don't necessarily think about. But when you get out there in the civilian world without that military support, these conversations become just magnified even greater.
Yeah.
So if you're only used to dealing with your immediate manager or their immediate overseer, like you're not used to dealing with like jumping that chain of command and talking to your CO basically,
Yeah.
um, the XO or the CO or anything like that. So you're talking um how that normalization of these conversations is was really helpful and really pivotal to like being out in the real world. And I'll kind of
Hmm.
touch on some of that stuff later as we go. Um, so I ended up coming back from Afghanistan, unfortunately on less than great circumstances. I actually came back early from my deployment because I came home to put my father to rest, unfortunately.
Hmm.
I ended up getting a Red Cross call and having to fly home pretty much immediately, and
Right.
so that really sucked. That wasn't a great way to end my deployment, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so that kind of got me thinking about like what my future was. I had dealt with a lot of different things from not super great leadership kind of going in both areas. I dealt with a lot of different things where I just wasn't happy with the job that I was doing professionally.
Hmm.
Um, like playing music was great, but there's a certain element that's changed about music when you incorporate the military mindset. There's something stifling um, that I just didn't really care for.
Yeah.
And that's just my personal viewpoint. And of course, I kind of bought into the Kool-Aid as well. I know a lot of people probably are hearing me. If they hear me on this, they're like, "Is that the same fucking guy?" Like I've chilled out. I've chilled out, and the Marine Corps exacerbates a lot of that intensity and just do what you're
Hmm.
told kind of mindset. And I'm a human being again. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, to all those watching, I'm sorry. Um,
Oh man.
but yeah, so I was interested in going. Like, I got a taste of the real Marine Corps, and I wanted to go do other things, and so I was looking at
Hmm.
going to go do a counterintelligence lat move, and I was pretty much all the way through. I had done everything except for my PFT and my final board. Like I'd already done my interview board. I'd already done all of my testing. It's a process. Anybody that's looked into counter intel
A
knows how
long
much of a
process.
process. It's a long process. I basically only had a year left on my contract when I came back from Afghanistan. I spent most of it dedicated to moving into counter intel, and all I had left was my board and my PFT. And so we had, in typical Marine Corps fashion, I'm in a brand new barracks that we just moved into, and our elevator's already broken. Typical Marine Corps fashion. So I live on the fourth floor, and that really sucks to do laundry. And so I'm just walking up and down, and just out of nowhere, I'm walking up these flight of stairs, and my knee just gives out on me, and I almost like face
Yeah.
plant into the stairs. And so I have to go through this whole thing with like medical. Nobody can figure out what the fuck is wrong with me. And so of course my PFT is on hold because they won't actually take your score. Like they only host
Right.
in-house PFTs. And so like you have to be, and not to mention you have to be technically deployment ready. And so they're like, sorry, man, we can't move forward with your board until we do the PFT, and we got to get you healthy first. It's like, well, I'm not fucking re-enlisting in the band.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not taking the risk of re-enlisting in this Hawk field to try and move over into counter intel. So that kind of really, there was just this chain of events from things that I didn't see, I didn't agree with, that I saw politically on my deployment, from a lot of the issues that I dealt with personally from my own direct leadership, to the fact that I ended up blowing my knee out and ended up blowing out my other knee while I was compensating for this one. And it's just like, you know what? Apparently, like everything is just kind of lining up. Apparently, it's just time for me to go home. So, it just is what it is. The Marine Corps thanked me. I thanked the Marine Corps. I took my DD-214. I drove off base and I went and I spent like a few days with my brother and his family, and I flew home on Saturday, and I actually went to work on Sunday. Like
Oh wow.
yeah, I had so I had just a little bit of time. I had like 2 months left on my contract when I had finally just made the decision to say no, thank you. And I spent the rest of it just kind of working on trying to like do job applications and get set up
Hmm.
so I could go home and take care of my widowed mother. Um, and so I ended up having a job lined up, working at a startup as an assistant manager. It was a really cool, exciting experience. And so like I said, I got out on Wednesday. I went and stayed a few days with my brother, and his family. I came home on a Saturday, and I was literally at work the very next day on Sunday. Like they knew the whole timeline of events that I was dealing with. They were still in the opening phase, and I went and I hopped on with them, and we ended up opening the doors to that business 3 months later, and that was really cool. I ended up sticking with them for about 3 years. Excuse me.
You're fine. You're fine. Trying to get my dog untangled. He was underneath me.
So that was a really cool experience. I got to work in yet another really exciting environment where I was working hands-on with these corporate executives, because you're talking, it's a small team. Like they don't
Hmm.
have like department heads and like subordinates. Like it was only department heads, and
Oh
they
wow.
were doing, yeah. So like you had so like at the time all you had was like the two owners, a couple
Hmm.
board members, like my direct boss, who also worked as the VP of operations. Um, you had like the IT executive, the marketing executive, and like it was a really small office. And so I'm working directly with these people as we're getting everything open. I helped implement a lot of the technology. I helped training with staff. I helped in everything. And it was just really cool experience to see business on like that side of house.
Yeah.
I ended up, kind of going to college back and forth a couple of times, trying to work on that GI Bill, and it just, of course, still never really stuck with me. And um, during that time, I was trying to move into a a different role, a little closer to home.
Hmm.
Because I was driving an hour every day, and that was a
Oof.
lot.
Yeah.
An hour each way, because that was like in Dallas proper, and like of course I lived in a suburb. Um,
And
so that was a lot of
that's
drive.
an hour at best, because if you hit traffic and stuff, it's even more,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yes and no. Like you say, if you hit traffic, I'm saying that like as in traffic is a given. Like
Oh, I see. Okay.
if
Yeah.
you've
Yeah. Yeah.
ever driven Dallas, you know that just there's traffic. Like if you
Right.
want to drive in Dallas when there's not traffic, you need to be on the road at like 3 or 4 a.m.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm not
Yeah.
even exaggerating on that, because I actually got to experience that like working, because it was actually a brand new movie theater. So some like I would close the building down some days. And so like last movie, like you have like midnight showings, the last movie's at
Yeah.
midnight. That movie might be 3 hours long, and now like we're getting out at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning with like closing the doors and getting everybody the hell out of the building. So
Yeah.
I that's the only reason I know that there is a point in time in Dallas when there's not traffic.
Wow. That's wild.
Those times it only took me a half hour to get home. So those were actually nice drives. You're just going home, you're just gonna
Yeah.
go to bed. There's no traffic to deal with on the way home, so that's fantastic. Um, and of course, like I said, with the drive, hours weren't super great, but I of course like our the hours were kind of expected as well as the hours changed. So it's not like I was always working those hours and things like that. And it was a really unique experience. But I still wanted something different. They had talked about me being a GM for a new location, and that location just never broke ground while I was with them. They're actually pretty big now. They've got multiple locations across the country now, so I'm really happy for them. But they just couldn't break ground when I was with them, and I was really wanting that next step. And
Yeah.
we just weren't able to align at that point in time. So I ended up finding a job working as an ops specialist for Chase Bank, kind of
Oh,
like right
okay.
down the street from my house. And that was a really cool experience where I was building a lot off of my experience with from the Marine Corps and with this previous job where I was working with in a training environment. I was working in a risk mitigation environment. So mainly what I was doing is I was the subject matter expert for risk and controls, internal auditing, and compliance
Wow.
for a Chase branch. So I did everything from making sure that like staff knew how to handle policies and procedures properly, because it's like obviously like customers aren't always going to know. Like customers, like our staff needs to know how to handle whether somebody like is asking a question and doesn't know, and they might like accidentally be breaking a regulation because like let's say for instance like just like a simple one, you can only take withdraw from your savings account 5 times within 1 month. Anything more than
Oh,
that is actually a regulation violation. And so customers don't
wow.
know something standard like that
Yeah.
because most people aren't pulling from your savings account more than that. And it's a whole
Yeah.
slew that I
Yeah.
don't want to get into all that, but that's just kind of like an example of a simple one
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
easy to miss. And so like of course our staff needs to know how to interact with that, all the way to the standpoint of like our staff needs to know how to interact if somebody's trying to rob the place. They need to know how
Yeah.
to make sure. Yeah, like there's so like it's a book. It's a book of
Yeah.
regulations and procedures and policies, and I ended up being the subject matter expert for all of that. And so I did that for a few years, and that was a really cool experience. And then
Very nice.
I ended up taking like all this experience I had built up. So my late father, he was a small business owner. When I was growing up, I got to see him do some really cool things. I've always had an entrepreneurial experience. Um, uh, I've always kind of had an entrepreneurial, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess just background. That's just always something I've been really interested in doing. Um, and doing for myself is being my own small business owner. So I'd always wanted to do that for myself. I finally found the opportunity to try and go do that for myself. And I ended up I man, I worked on my business plan for a few years. I did a lot of research. I was ready. And I opened up 4 months before COVID happened. So the
Oh
time
no. Yeah.
and so timing just could not have been worse. And that was, of course, frustrating. That was difficult. It was taxing. I we ended up only staying open for just over a year. So I ended up actually opening a food cart. Like I had the idea when
Hmm.
we were at Lejeune. Um, the hot dog guy comes out and so the hot dog guy comes out to the rifle range and every time we're out there,
Yeah.
and like nobody wants the roach coach, nobody wants like anything else from any of the other trucks. Like everybody lines up and waits and lines up for the hot dog guy. And so I'm just like chatting with him, just bullshitting one time buying a hot dog from him. And I asked him, I was like, dude, you're making a killing. I was like, how much do you make with this? And he was like, honestly, he's like, I make 6 figures doing this. And I was like, you're fucking kidding me. He's got an article framed,
Wow.
and so we're just sitting here talking for a while, and he's telling me how it was actually his dad that opened it. He's actually got a news article framed on the cart, like of his dad's story. It was really cool. It was this really old newspaper article. I thought it was really touching that he had that. And so he's telling me how his dad was a retired sergeant major, saw this niche in the market, saw this need and filled it. And like, of course, was super easy to get permits since he was like a retired sergeant major on the base.
Yeah.
Um, he got all set up, and that's just what he did until he decided to retire from that and passed it on to his son. His son took over and was doing that, and it's just like this is fucking awesome because like I love I've always loved cooking. I come
Mm.
from a pretty big family, as I was talking about. I've always like my mom taught me how to cook. I've just always really loved doing that. And so it's just like this might be something I want to go do. Like this might be something that I
Yeah.
actually want to go do because like I had a bunch of different ideas of numerous different small businesses, just different business endeavors that I want to focus on. But I thought this was a really good starting place to springboard off of. I thought it would be simple. I thought it would be a really good way to get my feet wet as a business
Hmm.
owner. So I spent a lot of time working on my plans. I spent a lot of time scoping out markets. I felt like I was really prepared. And like I said, COVID happened, and that like of course took away my market. Like
Yeah.
I was like lining up to do like a bunch of events. I was getting ready to like start talking to the base and see about getting on base myself. Like I was lining up to do a whole bunch of different shit. And then we literally weren't allowed to go fucking like see each other face to face. And
Yeah.
everything got messed up. And like the whole market got fucked up. And so like I was trying and then so like a lot what a lot of people may not know, I'm actually anybody that buys groceries should know, you saw the rising cost of groceries. Like
Yeah.
that hit restaurants, that hit any retail food establishment. And so like my beef prices, because I was only using like grade A Angus beef, my beef prices almost quadrupled. Like
Wow.
and so like you hear of like restaurants where they have these margins of like 20 to 30% like profit, and
Mm.
that's not an exaggeration. And so like I'm still trying to deal with keeping prices down while dealing with eating the costs myself, while dealing with a lack of custom. It was just a perfect storm. And so then
Oh yeah.
so of course I had to shut down my business after about a year of just struggling. Just ended up cutting my losses, and it's like, you know what, I guess I'll eventually go back to work. But of course, like I couldn't go back to work. Everybody's getting furloughed, like everybody's getting
Yeah.
laid off during this time. So it's just like, okay, so I guess for money, I'll just go back to school and use my GI Bill and finally get my bachelor's degree. I did that for a while, and I ended up dealing with a lot of really difficult things during that time frame. I ended up dealing with I ended up developing a lot of neurological issues, which I'm still kind of dealing with today. Like I developed vertigo, I developed like some gastrointestinal issues, I developed some blurring vision. Like I dealt with a lot of
Wow.
really like major shit, and also like brain fog. So so now I'm dealing with all this shit, and now it's affecting like my schoolwork as well because I can't even concentrate.
Hmm.
And so like I'm just dealing with all this shit on top of the fact that like I didn't realize that I was dealing with pretty severe depression at the time from being just a, a failure in my own eyes. Like
Yeah.
I couldn't let go of the fact that I failed. Like I'd never failed anything in my life.
Mhm.
I was a state and a nationally ranked musician like in my class. I was a nationally ranked baseball player. I was I almost became an Eagle Scout. I really regret like not like quitting the year before that. Like I succeeded in everything that I tried my hand at. And so to to fail in a standpoint that not only like was a personal failure, but it also like seriously like negative obviously negatively affected my finances. Like it really fucked
Oh
me up
yeah.
in multiple different ways. And so like I'm just struggling over here. And so I'm dealing with depression. I'm dealing with these neurological issues, and I'm just man, I was fucking drowning for a while. It was really hard, and it was was really hard. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't
How long
know
would you say
3 years.
that it was going on that you didn't do any, like you didn't recognize it to do anything about it?
So this whole thing spans now going on 4 years. But we're talking a span of a solid 3 years of just felt like I was fucking drowning
Yeah.
financially, mentally, spiritually. Like I'm really thankful that I'm here. Like I had multiple thoughts to myself that um that my wife would be better off without me. Like,
Yeah.
excuse me.
No, it's all good, man. And you know what, the things that you're talking about and that you're going through, veterans go through that all the time, and it is a very, very tough thing to really, one, tell yourself that, hey, I got to go get some help, and kind of assure yourself that, hey, this is the right thing to do. Because that first step of reaching out, that's hard. All the veterans out there, if you're struggling, need help, you're just not doing right. We talked about this quite a bit, but if you need help, please reach out for help. You can always reach out to the VA. They have some incredible resources. You can dial 988, press option 1. You can also text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to get you in contact with somebody that can help you out. It's all anonymous. You only tell them what you want to tell them. But they are specifically there to help you. And I promise you, they do answer the phone. They do reply to the texts and the chats. That's 100%. I know that they do that. So please reach out to them. They're there to help you and get you through whatever time you need or whatever you have in your time of need. But with that, Lee, I appreciate you, man. You rock. To all the veterans out there, stay motivated, change your socks.
Rah.